The school nurse didn't sound alarmed. That's what I remember most. She spoke in that careful, neutral tone they're trained to use, the one that keeps things from escalating. My daughter had a fever, not dangerous but high enough that they couldn't keep her. Policy required a pickup within an hour. I was in a meeting I couldn't leave. My phone was on vibrate under the table. I already knew, before I answered, that this was going to be a math problem. Time versus distance versus who I could call without owing something later. My mom lived 12 minutes from the school. I stepped into the hallway and called her. She didn't ask how high the fever was. She didn't ask how my daughter sounded, whether she was scared, whether she'd been crying. She sighed. Long. Performative. I'm not your babysitter, she said. You chose to have a child. Figure it out. There it was. The sentence she'd been polishing for years, finally used in a way she could defend. Clean. Efficient. Ungenerous. I didn't argue. That part surprises people when they hear the story. They expect yelling. Or pleading. Or at least some version of how could you. But I'd learned something over time. When my mother said no, she meant no leverage. Arguing only gave her something to push against. Silence, on the other hand, unsettled her, but only if it was followed by action. I understand, I said. My voice sounded flat even to me. Thanks for letting me know. She'd hesitated, like she'd expected a fight. Well, she added, sharpening it, I have plans. Of course, I said, and I hung up. I called my boss next. Then a coworker. Then the emergency contact list again. By the time I found someone who could leave work and drive across town, the hour had passed. The school called back. They said my daughter was sitting on the bench outside the office. Now, they couldn't keep her inside anymore because dismissal had started and staff was stretched thin. She was wrapped in her jacket. They assured me someone was keeping an eye on her. It was late fall. Cold enough that breath showed. I told them I was on my way. I wasn't. What I did instead was open my email and forward a message, not to the school. To the district office. 3 sentences. Factual. No adjectives. No accusations. My child was dismissed while ill and left outside awaiting pickup. A nearby guardian declined to assist. I want to understand what safeguards exist to prevent this in the future. I attached the timestamps. The nurse's earlier message. The policy document from the school website. Then I closed my laptop and went back into the meeting. When my coworker finally picked my daughter up, she was quiet in the car. Feverish but calm, she said. Grandma? No, I told her. Was she mad at me? No, I said, and meant it in a complicated way. This wasn't about you. That night, I didn't call my mother. I didn't text. I didn't post anything vague or angry. I put my daughter to bed, sat with her until her breathing evened out, and then sat alone at the kitchen table longer than necessary. I felt something that wasn't rage. It was closer to relief. Like I'd finally stopped trying to carry something that had never been mine. The next day passed quietly. Then the next. On the third morning, my phone rang while I was making coffee. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. By lunchtime, there were 7 missed calls and 3 voicemails. I listened the first one only. Her voice was unsteady. Not crying yet. Confused. Why is someone from the district calling me? She asked. They're asking questions. About you. About the school. I don't understand what you told them. The second voicemail was shorter. Sharper. Defensive. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not legally obligated to pick up your child. The third came that evening. She was crying then. Full, uncontrolled sobs that made her words blur together. They're saying I'm listed as an emergency contact. She said, they're saying, if I can't fulfill that role, I shouldn't be on the list. They're saying there could be consequences if this happens again. What does that mean? Why would you do this to me? I didn't return the call. What happened, very simply, was this: the district reviewed the situation. They contacted the school. They contacted me. And yes, they contacted the other adult whose name was on file. They weren't angry. They weren't dramatic. They were precise. If you are listed as an emergency contact, they explained, you are expected to respond or formally decline that responsibility. If a child is left unattended due to a refusal, the school is required to document it. Repeated incidents could trigger a review by child services, not of the parent, but of the safety plan. It wasn't a threat. It was procedure. My mother had spent years enjoying the title of being involved without the obligation. Grandma. Emergency contact. The person who liked the proximity of importance without the inconvenience of action. That illusion cracked. Her calls kept coming. Panic layered over indignation. Remove me from the list. She demanded in one message. I didn't mean it like that. She said in another. I was busy. Anyone would understand. Then, softer. You didn't have to do this. She was right. I didn't have to. But I also didn't have to protect her from the natural weight of her choices. I emailed the school and removed her as a contact. I added my coworker. I added a neighbor. I created redundancy. Systems instead of hope. That night, I finally sent my mother a message. One sentence. I didn't do this to punish you. I did it to make sure my child isn't left alone again. She replied immediately. Please call me. I didn't. Weeks passed. The fever faded. Winter came properly. My mother stopped calling every day. When she did reach out, her tone was different. Careful. As if she were speaking from behind glass. Our relationship didn't heal. That's the part people expect too, the reconciliation arc. What happened instead was smaller. She lost access. Quietly. Officially. Without a fight. And I gained something I hadn't realized I was missing. The ability to choose safety over sentiment, without explaining myself to anyone who had already explained who they were.